I have people on my Instagram that will DM me, followers, and be like, how did you do it? This is my dream life. I wish that I could just give up my 9 to 5 and buy
Yeah.
property and rescue horses. I'm like, do it. Just do it. It's
Yeah.
really that easy. You just have to have the passion, the drive, and the will, and of course, the knowledge.
There are healers on this planet with the power to soften the suffering of mankind, yet they have remained in the recesses of the world, abused, discarded, and labeled as trash. This is The Touch of a Mustang. I am your host, Shalise Clough, and I'm here to tell the story of wild horses, Mustangs, and the humans who are discovering and sharing their gifts while working to protect their well-being and preserve their spirit so this divine power won't be lost. Join us on this quest with the Wild Mustang.
To start with, why don't you just tell us a little bit about how your life came to coincide with horses, and then also how with Mustangs in particular?
Well, gosh, I was raised with horses. My dad, got me into horses when I was, 10 or 11, and just kind of had horses. My passion was Arabians at the time.
I
They
grew
still
up with
are.
Arabians too.
Yeah, Arabians and Mustangs are my jam, and they're very similar too. I think on opposite sides of the spectrum, but
Yeah.
still the same. So it was Arabians, and just kind of did, your you know classical dressage and all that stuff that you do. I don't ride like that anymore because my thoughts and beliefs and practices have changed. But I had horses up, through the beginning of my adult life, and then went without horses for quite some time.
Yeah.
And then, I'm kind of a very, I just really go with my gut, and I just fly by the seat of my pants, and I go with my instincts, and I just do. Like, I don't, it's like, I don't want to say I don't think about things, because I do,
Yeah.
but just, one day I was following along this blog. It wasn't a blog, really, more so it was just, I think it was Facebook, maybe, but I don't know. This was like before Facebook was really a thing. It was in 2014. But somehow I came across this group that was trying to save these 22 horses that were at a kill pen up in Washington that were going to ship to Canada. And I just followed this one horse in particular, and I thought for sure he was going to be rescued. I mean, he wasn't super skinny. I mean, he didn't have any muscle tone or anything like that, but he had full set of shoes, and he was gorgeous, this Arabian, cross gorgeous. And so I thought for sure that he would be rescued, and I was just like following his story for like this week, of which you had time to like rescue them. And
Right.
just throughout that time, like, I saw like the light in his eyes die, like his soul like literally like was dying. Like, in the beginning he was like, "Ooh, new friends," like, "Where am I?" And then it's just like it just like went away from him completely. And then I'm a hairstylist, and at the time I was an independent contractor, and his auction per se, or his ability to rescue him back, was ending at 3 p.m. and this is that my client left at 2:50, and I was like, okay, I'm just gonna get on and like check. I'm sure he's fine. Well, it turns out he was the only one that hadn't been rescued.
Oh, wow.
And I had 10 minutes, and I was like, what am I going to do? And I'm in Oregon. He's in Washington. I know nothing. I've never even met him, but I had to do it. So I got on the phone, gave him my credit card, and rescued this horse. 11 years later, here we are. I
You
still have,
started it all. Yeah.
yeah, I started, but it was actually the same week that I was also opening my own hair salon too.
Oh boy.
So that's kind of why I was saying, like, I tend to like just do
Yeah. You
things.
don't
Like,
talk yourself out of things. That's
it
good.
wasn't really the best time for me to be rescuing a horse that, I knew nothing about. Turns out he
Yeah.
was actually rather dangerous.
Really.
He had been, I, I don't know if he was abused as much as he just is extremely intelligent, and just he learned every trick in the book to not have to do anything that you want
Yeah.
him to do. So through training and whatnot, he's a magical horse. I mean, he was already to begin with, but we just learned each other's communication. So then, years go by, and I've always continued my training with horses in different avenues, different ways, variations, different people, different styles, different techniques. And it was during the pandemic, and I started becoming more enthralled. I always had a knowing, but I just became more, like, I guess, passionate about what was happening with the wild horses. And so I did an apprenticeship with a woman in Oregon who works with horses that have gone through a lot of trauma, and just kind of trying to teach the horses how to come into themselves, just in their brains, in their movement, in just everything.
Mm-hmm.
And I did that for a year. And then, that was part of me setting myself up to be available and be more in tune with what my plan was to move to Arizona and start this wild horse sanctuary. So there was a lot of steps that I took as a horsewoman to be ready to then take on these wild horses and do the best for them that I could as a person, as a human.
We're at the hair salon, then what
Right.
happened next?
So, well, I saved up it took about 2 years to really have this come to fruition. The sanctuary, kind of, sold everything that I had, literally, and just dedicated my life, literally,
Wow.
to moving down to Arizona. And, had never, the only time I had been here is when I came down here to find property, right? And drove down here in my van, found property, found raw land, completely raw. I mean, we ran utilities and everything when we were in Oregon, just by phone, just by kind of coordinating via email and whatnot. But, we didn't even have a road to, like, get onto the property or anything. But that was October 24th of 2022. And by November 12th of 2022, we were already rescuing horses. So, I mean, we're kind of nuts, I guess, if you, most people don't just get in there and just start doing,
Right.
but that's just
Get rid of everything and go after horses. No, most
yeah. I
people
mean,
don't.
it was time. It was just time. Like, I mean, it's like no one's stopping the roundups, or not no one. We're all trying, right? But the people who are actively doing the roundups aren't stopping. So it's like, when I got down here and then found out, which I had no knowledge of, Alpine wild horses up north in Alpine, Arizona, that were being rounded up.
So tell us a little bit about them too, because they're separate from the BLM. Is that correct?
Yeah, so they're Forest Service, which there's so many reasons why. God, it's like, I almost want to start crying when I talk about it, because I am so passionate about these horses. And the contractor took a bunch of them to Claiborne, Texas last night, and they went through auction. Thank God. Nirvana Sanctuary and Paws. God, I forget their handle, but it's Paw for Horses in Texas or something like that. And then, of course, Salt River Wild Horse Management all came together, and they were able to rescue the Alpines that the contractor took. This is their third time going through auction. It's a long, horrible story, but they're safe now, along with 2 BLM Mustangs. I don't know where the other BLM Mustangs went. I hope that they were safe. I don't know if you know, but I also did a big interview with a K-Gun 9 yesterday. So and then we had a winter storm coming in. So I had a lot going on. So I wasn't able to fully participate in that auction via online. So I just am going off what I heard from those sanctuaries, and at least the Alpines got safe. But anyway, back to your question. There were about 500 Alpines up in northern Arizona, in the Apache Sitgreaves Forest. So the Alpines reside on the Apache side, and then the Heber wild horses, they're all Forest Service. So they're on the Sitgreaves side of those mountains, the Apache Sitgreaves National Forest. They were considered unauthorized livestock. The Forest Service wanted them rounded up and hired a contractor, paid her $1 million for the first contract. They did bait and trap. They don't use helicopters, but they did bait and trap. That started in, October 2022. There is proof, and we all just kind of know, in October there were 50 that were found shot cruelly. I mean, a lot of them, didn't die for, weeks from their wounds. So that's kind of what really perpetuated me getting involved, was that, there's an extreme need because they're not removing them fast enough. So now they're shooting them, right? And so that's when I jumped in and just started rescuing them. And it was more so out of the lack of homes, because at the time, And still to this day, as you know, as I don't think this enough sanctuaries can grow fast enough, right? I mean, there's more horses in holding than there are actually wild, and so it's like the, it the average person isn't going to just go rescue a wild horse. I
Right.
mean, some people are, maybe some teenagers get into it for, 4-H programs or like whatever, or, like they might like get one and like train it. And we all know, or maybe we don't all know, maybe that's something I should explain, that AIP, the Adoption Incentive Program with the BLM. I have one BLM Mustang that I just rescued from a kill pen that was a victim of that failed program. Do I need to explain that?
Yeah, I mean, I guess let's talk about it a little bit for people who don't know. So the Adoption Incentive Program is that they are actually paying people to adopt BLM
Yeah, so
Mustangs now.
every person can get up to 4 at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So say you have a family of 5, each of those each of those family members can get 4 horses, right? So you get 1 or 4, and you get $500 in the beginning. And then if you keep them for a year. Now the idea, except for there's people in the world that take advantage of everything.
Yeah.
The idea in a perfect, beautiful world, it would be a good program, but it's not because of the people out there who will just take advantage of
Because
everything.
people are doing it for financial
They're
incentive.
doing it
They're
for
just wanting the
financial,
money.
yeah, because if you keep them for a year, then you get another $500, and then you get their title. So now you're actually the official like owner of
Mm-hmm.
these horses, but then they're just getting dumped at auctions, and then they get bought by kill buyers because, again, no, the average Joe isn't just going to go rescue an unhandled horse,
Right.
especially an older one.
Mm-hmm.
And right now I'm seeing BLM Mustangs go through cell authority at 1 year old. I mean, cell authority horses is a BLM Mustang that is 10 years or older, been identified as 10 years or older by the BLM. I mean, who knows if that's real or not. Or they've been put up for adoption 3 times and haven't got any bids on them. And a cell authority horse, you don't have
You
to have
just
any. You can
get the
just
title as
you can
soon as
just
you
get
adopt
that.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So no one
So
checking in on you.
no one checking
Just
in
you
on
get the
you.
horse. It's
You just
yours.
get the horse. But I mean, going through as cell authority at 1 year old, like, I mean, it's
Yeah.
just unbelievable. And the reason they're doing that is because the facilities are full, but they're
Mm-hmm.
still rounding up horses. So there's just like this. So long story short,
Yeah.
that's why I was like, I have to do something. I have to do something. And so I literally chose to give up my entire life and dedicate myself to helping as many horses as I can. Now, I can only do that so much because I have to rely on donations. And
Mm-hmm.
so that puts a limit on what I'm fully capable of doing, is just how many donations come in to
Right.
fund
Yeah.
that.
Horses do cost money when we take them into our care, for
a
sure.
lot a lot of money.
Yeah.
And it's not just food, it's all of it's everything. Medications, the feed required to get the medications in them, because they're wild horses. You can't just you know put warmer in their mouth, like, you
Mm-hmm.
have to give it to them in creative ways. Yeah, I mean, it's just all the things.
What made you choose Arizona? That's where I grew up.
Well, I was looking at New Mexico first.
Mm-hmm.
I came from the Pacific Northwest, and I lived there for 20 something years, and I was over the cold. I was over the
Okay.
rain. I
Yeah.
was over 9 months of rain.
That's
And
understandable.
yeah, and so I was going to the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was going to where I could afford enough acreage. I mean, God, I'd love to have like 3,000 acres or something like that.
Yeah.
But, my pocketbook could only afford 36. So I have 36 acres, but I mean, that's great. I mean, you have to start somewhere. And so I started in New Mexico, and it turned out that what I could find that was affordable to me wasn't in a location that had like access to any utilities at all. So
Mm-hmm.
no water, no
Yeah.
electricity, which electricity is fine. Like, you can go off grid, but no water. Like, you have to have,
Yeah.
horses require water,
Water
right?
is important,
So
especially when there's lots of sun.
yeah, well, exactly. Yeah. So New Mexico, I kind of had to write that off. And then I did another road trip, and drove around Arizona. Again, I would have loved to have been up north a little bit, like in the Snowflake, or is it Snowflake?
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
area.
Payson area.
Yeah, but again, it's
Mm-hmm.
just more expensive.
Right. Yeah.
And also cold. I don't want to be cold. It did snow here today. It snowed. I woke up to snow. All the hoses and pipes frozen, and
Oh no. Yeah.
I mean it happens like maybe 3 times a year where we're at.
Yeah.
So we're at 4,600 feet. So it's
Okay.
like we're not desert. We're high desert.
Okay.
High desert grasslands is what we're technically, which is perfect for me. Perfect for the horses too, because like
Yeah.
Phoenix area, holy crap, like it gets to like 120 degrees like all summer long. I don't even know how, especially the Alpines, because they're genetically from 9,000 feet.
Yeah.
So, that variation I think is probably not good for them, health wise, I would
Yeah,
imagine.
that's a big switch.
Yeah. Well, even their winter coats started coming in just like, when the seasons change as they do.
Hmm.
But their winter coats got like so thick and it's still like 70 degrees outside.
Yeah, they're so thick. I know we've had some 60-degree days here. You can tell the horses are all just so hot and uncomfortable.
That's just in their genetics. They're just
Yeah.
gonna, whereas my domestics, I put blankets on them last night because they just don't get those coats.
What's that been like for you to basically leave your old life behind, create this whole new life, depend on donations? I'm sure
I
that's
don't
changed
even
a
think
lot.
about it. I
Yeah.
haven't even I don't know if it's because I'm so busy and consumed with the horses, or if it's just literally so much my calling that my past doesn't exist anymore. But I don't think about it. I don't look back. There hasn't been a time where I'm like, oh gosh, what did I do? Or I mean, it's so much supposed to be exactly how it is that it just, I'm only working on the path forward. I don't even think about.
I mean, that in itself is incredible to me. I think there's a lot of people in the world that would like to find that sense of purpose and just mission and knowing that this is where you're meant to be.
Well, and I hear this so much. I have people, on my Instagram that will DM me, followers and stuff, and be like, how did you do it? Like, this is my dream life. I wish that I could just, give up my 9 to 5 and buy
Yeah.
property and rescue horses. I'm like, do it. Just do it. It's really that easy. Like, you just have to have the passion, the drive, and the will. Of course, the knowledge. Like, you have to have knowledge. You can't just wing it. I mean, you can, but I
At
don't
least be willing to seek out that knowledge as
seek
you
out
need
that
it. Yeah,
knowledge. Yeah.
absolutely.
And it maybe you're a person that has the money and the means, but maybe not the knowledge. Well, find someone who does. And especially if you become a 501c3, like, you have to have board members. So have your board be people that know what they're doing,
Yeah.
and then you just be the one that facilitates it, financially or whatever. I mean, there's so many ways that you can go about like living, your dream life, if that's what you want to do. If you want to leave the city and move out and buy property and start rescuing horses. Like, I mean, I don't want to put that out there, that I'm just saying like anyone do it.
Everybody go. Yeah.
Yeah, because I don't
No.
want there to be failures, where then
Yeah.
it's at the risk of, the horses.
Yeah, and I think if we're honest, that is also not everybody who's adopted a Mustang and it ends up in a kill pen have been people who just wanted the money or had these ulterior motives. I think some people did adopt Mustangs hoping that
Exactly.
things would go well, and it turns out Mustangs are difficult, a lot of them.
Yeah.
Um, Certainly mine haven't been easy. I had to learn a ton. I grew up with horses, but I still had to constantly be learning. So it's not for everybody if you're not going to be committed to it and willing to put in the effort and learn. And I would say let go of how you expect it to be, because it is
Oh,
magical, but
100.
it's not like Disney magical where it's like the horse walks up to you. It's a much longer, drawn out magical process with a
Yeah,
lot of stress and
100%.
strain. Hmm.
100%. I mean, and it's also like, forget about 9 to 5. I mean, it's 24/7.
Yeah.
There is no, I mean, I'm up so many times throughout the week checking on the horses for whatever reason, like just the other day, one of my little Navajo reservation babes, one of the other horses kicked him in the face, and it gave him a bloody nose, and it stopped bleeding, but then would start bleeding again. And it just made me nervous enough. I mean, I think about
Yeah,
Thor from the
stressful.
Bullet Peaks when he got kicked in the head and died, right? So it's like,
Yeah.
I'm just like, oh my God, Aldo, don't be like Thor, like it. And he's fine, but still, I got up several times in the night just to make sure that he was fine, but it's just things like that, like, like I don't sleep
Oh
very
no.
much, because even if I hear like a panel, rattling a little too much or something, I'm like, oh, does a horse have its foot stuck? Like I'm just like that. I care so much. I don't want any injuries. I don't want any, I care so much about them and their well-being
Yeah.
that I
It's hard. It comes with a good bit of stress if you are someone who cares and really wants the best for him.
and
So
I can't
it is
imagine, like,
challenging.
I can't imagine, you know, kind of brushing that kind of stuff off and not caring about it. It's like, because they are wild horses. Like that's the whole thing too. It's like, when you have wild horses, you also have to become like your own vet in a way, or
Yeah.
or go the extra mile to be preventative,
Yeah.
because
To do as much as you
you
can.
can't just
Yeah.
take them to the vet,
Right.
unless you have this, massive facility, where the vet comes to you and you have
Yeah.
all these,
Yeah.
that's the romantic part of it, is
Right.
is having them all, like, trained with just a snap or something. It's
Yeah.
like, it's taken me, some of them, gosh, years, for them to just fully trust me. And that's that's okay with me. Like, I understand. They went through something that I can't comprehend. They were rounded up in these horrible ways. They lost their families. They lost their freedom. They lost where they're from. They're in this, they know not, they don't know this area. It's like not even in their brain or their comprehension of what
Yeah.
happened.
It's a whole new world, quite literally, for them. They don't take much from their life and world before.
They were perfect and pure, and then all of a sudden they got, this warped sense of reality that we, as humans, like, you know like, forced onto them.
Yeah.
And so I try so hard to just allow them as much time as they need to decompress and come into themselves and figure out who they are. And most of the ones that I've rescued have been orphans. So, they've been babies, but still, it still, regardless of how young they are, it takes a lot of time to gain their trust. And again, I don't force it on them.
Yeah.
I let them figure out what it is that they want. Um,
Yeah.
because I'm not trying to make riding horses out of them.
Hmm.
I'm trying just to let them be, you
Yeah,
know.
and maybe talk a little bit more about that. I know you said you had some and they were able to find homes. With the ones you take in, is it that they're going to stay there forever? What is kind of your
I'm a
strategy and
sanctuary.
approach? Hmm.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a sanctuary. I do take in owner surrenders. I was on the news yesterday, and I woke up this morning to a bunch of emails from people
Oh,
like, "Oh, hey, my 85-year-old neighbor has a couple donkeys that they need to rehome." So I will spend some time trying to rehome those donkeys. I personally am at capacity right now
yeah.
until I get more supporters. I'm very, very, very strong into being responsible.
Yeah.
Um, uh,
Which is important because I think if you take too much on, you're not able to care for the ones that you have, and then it's just unfair to all of them if you're not taking care of what is
Yeah,
required to
trust
live
me, I
life.
would
And
love to
yeah,
just keep on bringing them in. Like,
right.
it breaks my heart that I can't, but at the same time, I know that I have to be responsible, and I have the means that I have right now,
Hmm.
is to take care of the 23 that I have. Beyond that, I would just be stretched too thin, and it's just not fair.
Yeah.
It's not fair to
Yeah.
the ones that I have. But anyway, it's just funny. I woke up to those emails. I'm like, I will find them, a place to go.
Which I think goes to another question I wanted to kind of ask you about. How do you, I guess, reconcile that a little bit? Like it is such a massive problem. I think there are solutions out there that just aren't being used and utilized. I think there's lots of programs that if they were expanded, it would be great options. How do you kind of reconcile that when, it's I have three of my own, but in the scheme of things, that's so little that we're doing for such a widespread issue that is occurring.
Well, exactly. And I think that, there's such a grand opportunity for everyone who shares the same vision to come together and
Yeah.
work together and
Yeah.
create kind of a large umbrella, um, of a program of sorts where we can work together and facilitate, um, like, here's this horse in need, and here's a list of sanctuaries that have open availability or whatever. And then
Yeah.
as like the large group do, a fundraiser that then will like be directed towards like that sanctuary who is going to take in. I mean, if we all just started working together,
Yeah.
and I guess sharing the donor base and sharing the education and awareness. And I mean, I talk to so many people who don't even know that wild horses are still actually a thing.
Oh, I'm
Like, I kid
sure.
you not. Like, they're like they think that the wild horses were literally in like old Western
In the
movies, and
Wild
that,
West.
and that that's it, and
Yeah.
that they don't even exist. They're like, oh my God, there's still wild horses out there that are being rounded up.
Yeah.
There's that. And then there's people that honestly believe that the narrative is that, they have to be rounded up because of drought and whatever. And it's like, well, maybe that's true in some places, but also look at, Washoe Lake, where they're like trying to fence it off right now and take away the water source from the horses. Like, working together, but also taking the time to get education and awareness out there to the public so that people do start wanting to be more a part of the
Yeah.
solution.
One thing that's really cool with sanctuaries and stuff, like we've said, not everybody needs to go out and rescue a Mustang, but there's a lot of sanctuaries, I think the good ones, that will really give you an opportunity to quote unquote adopt or really participate in helping a horse. Yeah, sponsor is probably the right word.
Yeah, well, like I said, we have that one that we just rescued like 3.5 weeks ago, and she's fully 100% sponsored. I mean, if I were to say like, I don't like to use the word own, because I don't think that
Yeah.
anyone can really like own a horse. But
Yeah.
if you were to use the word owner,
Hmm.
this woman would technically own her because she paid for her rescue, the transport, and she pays me monthly to feed her. I
Yeah.
don't get paid for the care or anything like that, but I don't care about that because the horse
Right.
is saved. And so, you can do that. I can take in more horses if they had 100% sponsorships, for sure. I mean, that's
Hmm.
a wonderful way to help. And also, if you feel passionate about that, so this woman then comes, she's in Phoenix, and I'm like 4 hours away from her, but she drives down here on the weekends and spends time
Wow.
with, her horse. And if she has time, like, she's missed a
Yeah, no,
weekend.
that's commitment. That's a lot.
Yeah, she felt compelled to rescue this horse, and I
Yeah.
had the space to keep it and take care of it. So,
Yeah, that's a really cool way to stay involved. And I think the other thing is, which I've talked with some people about, a lot of people are really excited in the rescue process. Like, let's save these horses and forget that that's 30 years of care in some
mhm.
capacity that is going to have to take place for that horse to remain safe.
Well, exactly. And that's where the sanctuary versus rescue comes in. I'm a sanctuary, therefore I keep the horses for life. Main reason being is because they were rescued as orphans or as, separate horses. In the beginning, with the Alpines, I was rescuing groups of horses, like, 4 to 6, but they were still orphans or not from the same family per se.
Hmm.
But now they are a family and they are bonded. Can't even imagine separating them. I thought about it, just not thought about doing it, but just thought about
How it would play out.
how it would play out. And I'm like, okay, let's say I adopted out Uma. Well, then I would have to adopt out Raven, and then I would have to adopt out Moon, and then I would have to adopt, and they would all have to go
Your
together,
whole herd.
and then that's the whole herd,
Yeah.
right? So it's like it's like one horse can't go without the other, which can't go without the other. It's like, I mean, there are herd naysayers can say all day long that that isn't real and that doesn't exist and that they don't form bonds, but they absolutely 100% do.
Yeah.
They are so connected. I mean, Bijou taught me something this morning. I didn't know what she was doing. It's kind of a long story. I won't get into it, but she was like, nipping on something on Uma, and she was telling Uma something, and then I learned what she was telling her, but it was horse talk, and
Hmm.
it's like they communicate with each other on such a different level because they don't have words. It's like they're family and best friends. It's like you can't separate that.
Or
And I
frenemies.
yeah, oh my God, yes. No, that happens too. And it also changes.
Yeah.
They get in different moods and they change. Orion, one of my orphans, I rescued him from auction. I didn't actually bid on him to rescue him. Another rescue, I won't mention any names, but they thought that he was a filly, and it turned
Mhm.
out that he was a colt, so they left him behind. And so I was like, well, I don't care if it's a filly or a colt. I mean, he's like 6 months old and he's an orphan,
Aw,
So
yeah.
I said, just, put him in my trailer. So they did and brought him here. He was probably 6 to 8 months old. Well, now he's, hitting like 3 or something.
Mhm.
And he's now like, if he were out in the wild, he would be in the bachelor stage of where he's trying to win mares from
Mhm.
other stallions. Well, they're not
Yeah.
stallions anymore, but it's still in their brains. Um, and so he just won the lead mare that I
Hmm.
have.
Oh, that's
Um,
so interesting to see
which,
those
yeah,
dynamics play out right in front of you.
yeah, it's just so funny because they're not stallions anymore, but they're still that way. And so him and Moon, the lead, uh, are just, and they're gallivanting around. Like, I mean, they're so in love. But it's also interesting because the other stallion, he's a gelding, but that she was with, that won her in the beginning of them being here, she wasn't happy with him. And I
Hmm.
didn't realize it until now she's with Orion, and she is like so happy. And she's probably one of the older mares that I have. She's like 10 or 11. So it's just interesting. I love
That is
watching
really
them,
interesting. Yeah, I bet.
just
It's
seeing
very
the
interesting.
dynamics. Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting to see the herd dynamics. If you just take the time to sit out there and watch them, it's pretty interesting to see their different personalities and the different roles that they play come to life and play out.
Well, like for instance, because she is the lead, and in wild horses, the stallion isn't the one that tells the herd what to do. The lead mare is the one that tells the herd what to do.
Yeah,
So
I believe
anytime
that.
that she, were to sense any sort of danger, even if it wasn't real, like when I was trying to teach her little baby to halter train, he was like, "Nope, I don't want you. I don't like what you're doing." Even though I wasn't hurting him or doing anything, but she
Yeah.
was like, so all she does is very subtly just start walking away, and the entire herd follows her.
Hmm.
And, if she runs, the entire herd runs with her. And
Hmm.
so it's just so fascinating to me that now her and Orion are running around like little toddlers. Like, they're having so much fun. And the herd just stands still because they know that
Hmm.
she's running because she's playing, not she's running and we need to run with her because there could be danger. It's just so interesting.
And really neat to see those different dynamics with horses that, yeah, they do have that side where they're on the lookout, aware of danger, but they also have this side that really just enjoys playing and participating in activities. That's fun to see.
Yeah, and they do it all day long. The
Yeah.
other interesting thing is too, because I have domestic horses and the Arabians, and then I, have the wild horses. And
Hmm.
the wild horses lay down and sleep several times throughout the day, and the
Yeah.
domestics don't.
Hmm.
So that's another interesting
That
thing
is interesting.
to me. I'm like, why don't my Arabians lay down several times a day? And the
Yeah.
wilds do. Like,
Yeah. It's
it's
interesting the different adaptations that
Mhm.
they've made. I wanted to talk about one thing you touched on, which I think is important. How can people who are wanting to help and maybe aren't in the horse world, how can they find the rescues that are doing it the right way? I think
Oh,
unfortunately, even with
good one.
rescue and sanctuary, there's people who, meaning to or not, can take advantage of it because there is money at play and things like
Yeah.
that. Um,
Well, and oftentimes they don't start out that way,
yeah.
but they do, they end up
Or,
that way
like we
because
kind of alluded to before, where they maybe get overwhelmed and aren't able to care for the horses. How can people do their best to ensure that if they want to help a horse, it's going to be in a situation that's truly going to help them with an organization that's really focused on what's best for the horse?
that's I mean, I wish that's like the $1,000,000 question,
Yeah.
I wish that there was really a way, and there are ways. Guide Star is a good resource.
GuideStar kind of rates
GuideStar
nonprofits.
rates
Is that right?
nonprofit. Yeah, because you
Yeah.
have to follow specific protocols, and you have to, like, write in and give them information on a consistent basis.
Mm-hmm.
We're only gold. It goes bronze, silver, gold, platinum being the highest. You can only be platinum if you raise $50,000 and above. We're not there, so we're still gold.
Mm-hmm.
So don't look at gold and be like, oh, they're not platinum yet, because it might just mean that there's still a smaller
Yeah.
rescue and they're
So
just
you kind
not.
of need to know how to read it. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but it'll show on there the assets and whatever, and we're still at zero because we just are, which is fine. I'm just kind of
Yeah.
giving. I'm not complaining. I'm just giving information to
Right. No, it's good to
there.
have a reference point from which to
So
judge
I
if
mean, the
people want
goal
to
is
take a
to
look
get
at it.
platinum, but just because they're not platinum, it doesn't mean they're not good. It just means they might be a smaller rescue or
Mm-hmm.
sanctuary. So GuideStar is one, but really, if you're in the area, even 4 hours away. I mean, I have so many people. Majority of the people that have come out here have driven all the way from Phoenix, which is a good 4 hours. So if that's something you're willing to do, I mean, unfortunately, we are kind of located in no man's land.
Yeah,
Which
which I
is,
think a lot of sanctuaries probably are going to be because it does take land to have horses.
yeah, exactly. I think going back to what I was saying before, how if rescues were to work together and have this, like, large umbrella, but if
Yeah.
you have, like a board at the top, people who are well respected, who have maybe not a big following base, but just who are well respected. I'll say a smaller rescue who's done huge things, in my eyes, would be For the Love of Aria. So that would be someone who I would consider would be, like, maybe at the top of the umbrella, that would help, one of the, like, initial go-to people. Like, someone asked me the other day, you have so much knowledge, you're into education and awareness and all these things. Like,
Mm-hmm.
have you ever thought about, like, writing a book to kind of help people do better at rescue? Rescue 101, if you
A
will,
guide.
right?
Yeah.
A guide, because there really isn't one out there. And I was like, oh, God, like, I could totally do that, but it would have to literally be like a manual, like a really big manual, because there's so much to cover. And that's why working together, if you get people from different backgrounds and stuff that have different knowledge and education in so many different ways, and you all come together and put your brains together, then I think that's how we, as that group, could weed out the bad ones, the ones that
Mm-hmm.
aren't fitting the protocols or doing right by the horses. Unfortunately, there's so many people that are wolves in sheep's clothing. And
Yeah.
it takes, and sometimes, unfortunately, it takes us finding out the wrong
Yeah.
that they're doing in horrible ways.
And I think that first thing you said about people coming and visiting your place, I think that's probably a really good measure that people could find somewhere close enough to them where it's, you can pop in, see how they're doing, see if they have needs and visit the horses. I think sanctuaries and rescues who really want what's best for the horses would always welcome that. Do you feel like that's true?
100%. And if you're not willing to offer that, then you're not doing it right. And
Yeah.
that you have
I
something to
would
hide.
think that's a red flag, right?
Yeah, that would be like the first red flag. If you don't answer questions, if they just think it's so important to be transparent about everything that you're doing, and if somebody has a question, I think it's so easy as a human to just, like, automatically get defensive about things, when really, especially when it's like via writing, if it's DMs or emails or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
like, you can misread the tone. And if you just really keep your belief systems neutral,
Mm-hmm.
and just keep your mind open to options and possibilities, or when whatever, then I think you can find that when people are asking you questions, they're not trying to be malicious. They just really simply
Mm-hmm.
want to know, and
Yeah.
it's important to share and
Yeah.
come to a common ground.
Yeah. And I think it's even good for not everything is beautiful and perfect in rescue and sanctuary.
No,
Um,
it's not.
and so I think it's good for people to understand and see the hardship and that, yeah, it's not just magical fields with horses surrounding you. Like there's struggle, there are health issues you have to think about, things sometimes don't go right, don't go the way that we would want them to go. And I think that's a reality that can take place even with people who really have the best of intentions.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I had, one of our Alpines pass away from EPM, and, there was really nothing that I could have done different. She was misdiagnosed from one vet, and that, in my eyes, set her back. She ended up passing away the day before her medication arrived. And, it was one of those things where it's time sensitive,
Yeah.
and she needed that medication. But, like I said, the first vet misdiagnosed her. And EPM is something that it is difficult to
Yeah, it's a
diagnose.
hard one.
So it's not even really that vet's fault. It just is what it is. It just
Yeah.
happened. And, who knows how long she even, because horses are so good at hiding their pain and everything too. And so she might not have even started showing symptoms or anything, because I believe I caught it as soon as she was showing symptoms. But again, she's a wild horse. I mean, she could have not been showing symptoms, but been
Yeah.
dealing with it internally for time, so it is. I mean, there's things that happen that are out of your control, and it's just the way that it is.
One question I have for you, one thing that I come up against is it seems like, you were talking about if we could develop this bigger community, and that's something that I really see. I think whether it's Mustangs in sanctuary or Mustangs that are being used for good purposes and ethical ways, um, there is a lot of potential there. And as we talked about, a pretty big problem or issue. There are lots of horses in holding that there's just not that same amount of adopters for. So unless other programs and strategies are developed, that's probably not going to change. And as you pointed out, could just be getting worse. What are some ways that Mustang people in the entire community can come together? One thing that I have found is a lot of sanctuaries aren't interested in talking to me. There's kind of this advocacy side, and then there's this quote unquote ownership side. And I think my Mustangs are very happy. I'm very aware of them. How can we join together a little bit more? I know that I've had people who would fall under the advocacy category make comments on my page that, somehow I'm responsible for the roundups or something like that. And it just creates this divide.
Really? See,
Well,
I just
that
find
we're
it
part of the
so
problem. Yeah.
I just find it so interesting when I hear something like that. Um, like why you? Like, why would anyone pick on you? And same thing with, people picking on Nada from Return to Freedom. I'm like, why would anyone pick on her? Like, she's doing so much good. That's the part, and I don't want to say any names, but that's why I really try to play Switzerland. Like, I'm here for the
Yeah.
horses, period. I'm here for the horses.
Yeah.
Whatever, chatter is going on, like, in the rescue world with people who are just, pretend advocates.
Yeah.
There's a lot of people who really are pretend,
Hmm.
and they've never rescued a horse in their entire life, yet they somehow have this extreme knowledge of how it should be done.
Yeah.
And if you're not, following, their guidelines, then you're wrong. And I got maybe, like, emotionally sucked into that years ago,
Yeah.
and it really, like, it internally kind of wrecks you, and puts doubt in your mind and makes you feel like, what, I can't do this, I'm a failure,
Yeah.
this is bigger than me, I can't accomplish what I'm striving to do. People that do that to people like me, it's not okay. So
Yeah.
I've learned to just, that's background noise to me.
Yeah.
It's clutter, it's chaos. It doesn't serve the horses. It doesn't serve
Yeah.
my horses. It doesn't serve me. It doesn't serve my sanctuary. And so I just leave it alone. They can talk all they want. It doesn't bother me.
You're right.
And the thing is that, people will see through the fluff, hopefully.
Yeah.
That's what I hope. And the people who don't see through it, then they're not in the right space either. That's just where it gets so difficult, is because it goes back to what I'm saying. Like, if we all just start working together, we could accomplish
Yeah.
so much more. If
Yeah.
there
And I
wasn't.
would so love to bridge that gap because I think that there's a lot of
Exactly.
people,
But then it
the
creates
people that
confusion.
comment, they say they want to save Mustangs. And I'm like, well, I can guarantee that the three I have, they will be safe for their whole life. And it creates such a divide between different categories of people because they're doing it different ways. So I would love, and I don't know if you have thoughts on this, just to find ways to kind of bridge that gap so that we can all come together for the horses and realize, and I guess I don't fully know your perspective, but some people
But I
think you
think,
shouldn't ride them. I feel like it's okay to ride them. I think my horses
well, I think
enjoy
they,
that and
yeah,
different
I
things
mean,
like that.
if they want to be ridden, I mean, totally, 100%. I mean, I have this one horse, Orion. He's the one that was
Mm-hmm.
left behind at auction. I had this woman who came to help me. She was a friend. She was a friend like 20 years ago. She was really into rescuing Mustangs and training Mustangs and whatever, but now she's flipped the aisle, and I didn't realize that. Now she's, in fact, when she left here, she's like, I hate Mustangs. I never want to work with them again.
Oh my goodness.
yeah, I was like, whoa, like that's that's who you are to me. Like
Right.
you were the like master Mustang trainer, like in my eyes 20 years ago. Like what happened?
Mm-hmm.
But now she rides quarter horses and rounds up cattle. So it's just like she
Well,
flipped.
and that's like a big thing in that
Yeah,
culture. Mustangs are little worthless the mutt horses in a
yeah.
lot of arenas.
But she's literally she's done interviews where it's like, I mean, she's like crying because like she can't, believe that these Mustangs are being rounded up. Again, this was like 20 years ago. So
Mm,
I was like,
mm-hmm.
whoa, like, so
Yeah.
anyway, so I had her like come here to like help me because she's, at the time was in the area, and now she's, I think, in Colorado. But, anyway, she told me that Orion was explosive and that he was never going to be able to be trained. And I was like, what? I'm like, but no, I'm like, I can walk up to him right now and put a halter on him. Mind you, he really hadn't ever had a halter on him before. We might have played around with it a little bit, but he by no means was halter trained. And
Mm-hmm.
she's like, yeah, right, I dare you. And so sure enough, I walked up to him and put a halter on him, and he just let me. And she was like, whoa, okay, well, never mind, I take that back. And then like one day I was just kind of out there messing around. I have a saddle that, I used to put on them. It's just a training saddle.
Mm-hmm.
It's no good to be used for riding, but
Yeah.
he was just standing there, and I was like, well, I'm just gonna see if he'll have the saddle on. Put the saddle on him, didn't even flinch, like no problems. Other horses, I've ridden one of them bareback, but I put a saddle on her and she just starts bucking, and she does not want that thing on her. Now maybe eventually she'll get over it, but I don't. I mean, that that to me was enough to show that she just maybe isn't ready for it yet, or just doesn't want it at all. So that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
That's fine. She doesn't have to have it on. But even my Arabian, like he's so well versed in classical dressage. I mean, he knows more than I do, like way more than I do. And sometimes he doesn't even want me near him. And that's
Mm-hmm.
perfectly fine. Like, and not near him. I'm being facetious. He actually wants me around him all the time.
Yeah.
But but like he'll tell me if he doesn't want a saddle on.
Yeah.
He'll turn his head around, and he won't ever bite me, but he'll like pretend to be nipping at me or whatever, and he just doesn't want to go for a ride. So what I do instead is I'll take him for a walk.
Yeah.
I mean, he still wants to go for it. He still wants to be with me, and he still wants to like,
Mm-hmm.
get out and do something. So we'll just go for a walk, and it's still a spending time together, and it's
Yeah.
fine. So
Yeah.
to me, it's like it doesn't. I think it's just what as long as you're listening to the horse and you're not forcing the horse to do something against its will, then it'll tell you. It'll let you know what it wants to
Yeah.
do. Artax loves my Arabian. He loves obstacle courses. He loves that kind of stuff. Like I really want to do endurance riding with him because
Yeah.
he just loves that. His brain is going a million miles a second because he's an Arabian, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so he loves the challenge. And it just depends on the horse.
Yeah.
I think that saying no, like a definitive no, don't ride any horses, is also not doing them favors, because sometimes they need to have more activity for their brain.
Yeah. More activity, more stimulation, more purpose.
Yeah. And
Mm-hmm.
again, they enjoy it. And for the ones that don't enjoy it, then don't make them do it. That's perfectly fine.
I think that's a good attitude to have with the horses, to just be aware that they have different personalities, different preferences, and different needs is really important. Let's see. Is there anything you specifically wanted to talk about we haven't touched on yet?
Well, I think well, to me, my one of my goals, and this is what I wanted, why I said this to you in the email, where it's like I wanted to talk about Horses being rounded up and being taken away from their native land is obviously something that shouldn't be happening. If I knew what to do to stop that, I would. I mean, I think that writing into our legislators and all of that simply isn't doing it. It's falling on deaf ears. It just, I mean, at a complete loss about what actually to do to that would be more effective in stopping the roundups or at least reducing them or something.
Yeah.
Like I don't, I mean, there has to be some sort of vigilantism, is that the word?
Yeah.
Um, that that is used in a productive way to somehow stop this from happening. I don't have the answer for that, but unfortunately it's happening. So they then have to, go somewhere. They need to get out of holding. Like that's no place for these wild horses. So, that's why I started the sanctuary. But then, another aspect of, do we ride horses? Do we not ride horses? Whatever. I do feel like all horses have very magical power within them naturally. They're just genuinely pure souls. And I think their ability to heal is an actual thing. And I'm in the process of becoming a equine therapist. I'm not certified yet, but I'm in the process of doing it. And once it happens and our retreat is finally ready to go, I do want to, I don't want to use the word use, but, have the horses, the ones that want to, participate in healing retreats, healing by way of horse. Because this one horse that I have, Phoenix, anyone who has touched her or even come within several feet of her, I mean, she just has this magnetic force that just pulsates out of her body. Like she is so incredibly therapeutic and healing. Literally every single person that has touched her for the first time has started crying. And it's just, she's so magical and pure and again therapeutic, that to me is something that we as humans need. um, and
Yeah.
and if Phoenix is her name, Phoenix Rising, if she could reach um so many people that need that healing touch or
Yeah.
that healing presence or whatever, then that does so much good. And maybe that is one of the answers of how we can kind of coordinate a way into people realizing the potential of
Yeah.
wild horses and feel more compelled to want to be a part of the saving and rescuing of them if they actually experience that magnetic, therapy themselves. Then they'll be like, oh my gosh, okay, I get it. I've witnessed it. I've been a part of it. That's kind of my ultimate goal with Moksha Sanctuary, is to be a healing center so that people can come and experience that and have their eyes opened in a whole new different way,
Yeah.
that maybe they didn't even realize was possible. And
Yeah.
I think all horses are capable of it, but there's just something about Mustangs that just really, really hit you deep inside your heart, um, and just kind of wipe away your stresses. I mean, they create a lot of stresses too when you're taking care of
Yeah. When you're
them.
the one that's responsible
When
for
you're
their
the one
care,
that's
that's true.
responsible for them,
But if you
they
can just come
definitely do.
visit.
Yeah, right? And I
Yeah.
mean, and I also have to get my horses, because they're so playful, I have to get them used to, uh, like I've taken my yoga mat out there several times and they just they think it's like a dragon that's going to hurt me, so they try to like get
Mm,
the yoga mat out from underneath me. They're like, no, we don't want you on this. It's actually really
that's
funny.
funny.
I have
That is
videos of
funny.
it, but yeah, but I think I don't want to say using horses in that way, but giving the community an opportunity to come experience something like that,
Yeah.
this power that they have, that they're able to share, I think is another way to open people's eyes to the magnitude of what's going on.
I agree. That's definitely something I've seen and felt, just the power that they have to help humans be better
Yeah,
in lots of different aspects, but just having that interaction with the horses is something, like you said, it's pretty incredible. And I think it's also a good example that most of us would be content with them running free. There's not a lack of horses for the people who want them in their lives, but it is an example of something beautiful that can come out of something that's not ideal.
Yeah.
And, just talking to people like you, I really do think that there's hope that, it will continue, and everybody doing their part, it can really add a compounding effect to this experience that we have with the horses. And I've definitely found that they're really incredible to be able to interact with and have in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. It goes back to, do we ride or do we not ride? Some of the horses don't want to participate with humans at all. And so that's perfectly fine. I have plenty of Mustangs that really do want that human interaction. And so, those are the ones that will probably choose to
Mm-hmm.
be a part of the
Yeah.
healing by way of horse. That will be their option, and they themselves really like that connection.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
it's so neat that they do like to be around people. I often wonder, I'm not sure why you guys want to be around me, but I like that you do.
right. And that also goes to another aspect. Like, I make it very much a priority of mine to have myself centered. If there's something weird and funky going on with my mood, or if I'm not in the right space or whatever, I don't go unless they need me, obviously. But
Yeah.
I don't go out there. I'm not going to go put my negative, crap onto them so that they can make me feel better. Like,
Yeah.
it goes both ways. Like, I'm not gonna just dump all my, hurt feelings or whatever might be going on, for the day. Like, I make sure and have myself centered and in a good place, at least balanced,
Mm-hmm.
before I go out there and really approach them, because that's not fair to them, because they do absorb so much, and
Yeah.
they're empaths. So am I. So maybe that's why I understand them so well too, is it's just within my nature as well. Maybe that's what it comes down to. Maybe people who are starting rescues and sanctuaries need to take like a quiz or a test or whatever and see like where they fall on like empath level, or
Yeah.
whatever, like the psychopath. Like,
Empathy scale.
right.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming and joining me. I loved hearing about the work you're doing. I think what you're doing is really cool. Your story is inspiring that you would just feel this pull towards this, and it's like, all right, I'm doing it. And I think that there's a lot of really incredible, great things ahead of you. Super grateful to just have someone else out there who cares about Mustangs, working hard to care for them and to spread awareness about them. And so I appreciate you coming on here and sharing all that with me.
Well, and thank you so much for the opportunity.
Absolutely.
I'm very grateful to get to share and get the message out there and get the voice of the voiceless.
Hmm.
They don't have the ability to I mean, they do have the ability to communicate, but we as their
Not over a
stewards.
podcast. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. But we as our stewards, it's our responsibility to share
Yeah.
and get their message out to the populace, um, to show and share and educate and bring awareness
Yeah.
to their story,
Yeah, absolutely. And I think
their
every
story.
voice will make a difference. If you find one more person that becomes aware of wild horses and wants to do something for them, that's a pretty cool thing.
Yeah, exactly. And so then, just to touch on that base just one more time, like, if whoever is watching this, if you do feel compelled and you feel it in your, you're very passionate about, wanting to rescue a wild horse, but you don't have the place to keep them, or the knowledge, or whatever, you can always find a sanctuary like me, like Moksha, and rescue a horse,
Yeah.
do 100% sponsorship, and ultimately, do your part in rescuing a horse, and we'll care for them for you.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
there is that way.
Yeah, and just to add to that, how can people find you? What can they do to support your goals and missions? And what are some of the things that maybe you provide for them? I know not yet, but at least visits, it sounds like, and maybe in the future, some opportunities for retreats and things like that.
Yeah,
Tell us
so
more about that.
the retreat, it's still in its infant stage. It's been in its infant stage for quite some time, but that's just based on the fact that horses do take up so much
Yeah.
time and also
Yeah.
money. And,
Mm-hmm.
my husband and I both, we both work. I'm not full time, but still
Yeah.
I work 4 days a week, and
Mm-hmm.
he works every single day. And then we also are 24/7 sanctuary. So,
Yeah.
we try,
It's a lot.
we're
Yeah.
taking baby steps to get the retreat going,
Yeah.
I would
Well,
have
and
loved.
so how can people help you in that?
Exactly, like donations, so that, so that maybe my husband can take just, a week off work so that he can dedicate all that time to the sanctuary, and we could have it up and going in literally like a week. Like I have all the furnishings, everything like that is needed to have it up. We just need to take the time to actually
Yeah.
prepare the land.
Yeah. It's a
Because it
lot.
is
It's a lot of work. Like
right.
if you don't have horses, you don't realize how much sometimes the simplest stuff just ends up being a much bigger project than you
Oh my
anticipate.
goodness. Yeah. So like the vision is there and we have everything. It's just a matter of needing the time.
Mm-hmm.
And we work so much, so it's just hard. So that is in the future. So like keep your eyes open for that. And that will, mokshasanctuary.com is our website. And then we're not very present on Facebook because I just don't like Facebook. I just
Yeah.
can't. And I also don't find it to be user friendly, to be honest. And I don't have time to sit there and figure stuff out. I'm dedicated to the horse
Yeah.
for most of my
Yeah.
time. So I'm not gonna sit there
So
and
don't
become.
worry about Facebook unless
Yeah,
that's
so
the only way
I'm not gonna
unless
become.
that's the only way you can get to them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But we are very active on Instagram. So our Instagram is, at Moksha _sanctuary. Moksha is Moksha. It's Sanskrit for freedom. What we do is our mission is to give wild horses back their freedom. So,
Yeah.
so Moksha Sanctuary. Our email is moksha.sanctuary13@gmail.com. When I started that email, that was when we had 13.
Nice.
Now we
Well,
have
I mean, that's
now we
kind
have
of a
20.
cool milestone that
Yeah,
you can
now
look
we have
at and say that changed.
Yeah, now we have 23. But every
Wow.
time that I write out Moksha.sanctuary13, I'm like, I always reflect back on that was when we had 13. And
Yeah.
I thought 13 was a lot, now 23. And
It is a
you know,
lot.
it's but
Yeah.
I do want it to grow. We can grow with volunteers, and we can grow with sponsorships, and we can grow just with donors, support.
And we'll include all that information too in a written form so people are able to see that. But thank you so much again for being here.
Thank you for joining us and learning about horses that heal and the humans who help them. We hope you'll continue with us on this journey. We'd love for you to subscribe on your favorite platform and follow The Touch of a Mustang on any of the major social media outlets. Please share with your friends, anyone who loves horses, or anyone who might be struggling and could benefit from this message. If you have felt the healing power of horses or help them in their divinely appointed mission, please reach out. We want to hear your story. As we say goodbye, always remember that the horse is always there to help you heal.